Well, hi everybody, welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. As we tape this, tensions have risen on the Korean peninsula to the point where it seems that literally anything could happen. An invasion, a preemptive counterstrike, launch of a nuclear missile, shooting down the missile, or simply nothing at all. So, how do things get to this point? How does the weakest country in the world get to dictate the course of events against the most powerful country in the world, not the other way around? Why does this happen throughout modern history, especially when it comes to the West? Well, all you have to do to find the answer is to look at the position the Obama White House has taken with regard to the threats coming from the Kim regime in North Korea. There have been reports that the U.S. position will be to respond proportionately. In this case, ridiculously proportionately. They sink a patrol boat, we sink one of their patrol boats. They fire 50 artillery rounds at a military base, we fire 50 rounds at one of theirs, and so on. This reasonable, measured, responsible policy will virtually guarantee the war that they're trying to avoid. Now, the obvious reason is that by telling the North Koreans that they will get a one-to-one response, what you're really doing is you're making the most powerful nation in the world publicly commit itself to fight as if it were the least powerful nation in the world. In other words, the total firepower unleashed, the total damage sustained, the total deterrence will be determined by one party and one party only, Kim Jong-un. This is insanity. And it's not new insanity. There's a term for this kind of thinking. It's called mirroring. Mirroring is where you assume the person you're engaging with thinks the way that you do. If you're reasonable and if you're willing to compromise, well, you assume that they're reasonable and willing to compromise. If you'd like to see a reduction in tensions, you assume they would like to see a reduction in tensions, and so on and so on and so on. State departments and foreign ministries are where these psychological pathologies are most often bred. They say the military is always preparing to fight the last war. Well, diplomats are always preparing to negotiate with themselves. The announcement of proportional response is designed to lower tensions between the North and the U.S.-South Korean alliance, but Kim Jong-un does not want lowered tensions. He wants them raised. This weak, fat, unserious man-child only retains control of his country and his life, not just his life of leisure, but his actual life, by projecting a posture known to the Koreans as juche. It's a complicated idea, born of North Korea's history of invasion and isolation, but the essence of it is a bristling aggression designed to convince enemies that they, the North Koreans, are far more powerful than they actually are. And now, as if on cue, the White House has mirrored that view and assumes that by assuring Kim that we mean him no harm, we can avoid war by de-escalating the situation. But by doing this, we virtually guarantee war because Kim is third-generation crazy, and he, like the rest of his country after 60 years of self-indoctrination, actually believes they are as powerful as they claim they are, and the most powerful nation in the world has just proven it to them by promising not to hurt them any worse than they hurt us. They're treating North Korea as if it were Belgium, but North Korea is not Belgium. They're not cooperative, reasonable, civilized Westerners with a history of trade and Western notions of democracy and civilization. North Korea is, in fact, a clinically paranoid, pathologically narcissistic regime which governs by terror and which can only be deterred by the one thing they truly understand, and that is fear. Fear that their adventurism, designed to prop up their own internal weaknesses, will get them into even bigger trouble. Fear that a missile launch or some other example of juche swagger will not show their countrymen how strong they are, but rather result in the destruction of their regime. Fear that they are messing with powers beyond their comprehension, and a clear and believable statement that actual aggression will result in their destruction. Now, the great irony here, of course, is that this sounds brutal and unsophisticated to the deep thinkers, usually but not exclusively on the left. On the contrary, it's the Western elitist intellectual arrogance, their historical ignorance, their vain, self-centered narcissism, and their plain stupidity that causes this mirroring disaster. And as I said, it's not a new phenomenon. Neville Chamberlain and the rest of his appeasement-minded civilized gentlemen spent the critical decade of the 1930s trying to convince Herr Hitler that Britain and France meant him no harm. They assumed he had the same desire as they did, which was peace. He didn't want peace. He wanted the world under the boot of Nazism. Their lack of response to his naked aggression did not reduce the chance of a Second World War. It guaranteed it. Because Adolf Hitler and Kim Jong-un, now listen carefully, are not like us. They are tyrants. They don't see us as reasonable, they see us as fatally weak. And as long as they see us as weak, they will calculate that they can get their way through violence because we've told them all, the Japanese, the jihadis, all of them, that we'll do anything to avoid war. If we had the humility, the intelligence, and the plain common sense to try to actually understand them instead of mirroring our own motives onto them, well, then we would know exactly what to do in order to have prevented that last war, and this one, and the next one, but we never seem to. We're too smart for that, you see? And we're going to pay for this arrogance, just like we always do.